All right, good morning, afternoon, whatever time it may be when you're watching this video. So this video is going to help you, this is for 8th graders, this is going to help you learn how to break objects down into basic shapes. So I'm going to keep this video brief. We're just practicing basic shapes here. All right, so the first thing I want to go over is just how we can break down objects into basic shapes. So if we're looking at different objects like this glue stick, for instance, we know math-wise it would be considered a cylinder, right? So it's important to think about how are we going to break this down. I mean, this is pretty basic, but how can we keep it in the most basic shapes in order to draw it realistically? Drawing in basic shapes helps you with proportions. It also helps you with capturing kind of an outline or kind of like just a quick snapshot of a picture, and then you can work in more details. So the basic shapes that we're going to be covering are circles, triangles, and squares, as well as rectangles and ovals. When we're drawing basic shapes, it's important to remember to not move just your fingers and your wrists. So if I'm moving my fingers and my wrists only and I try to draw a circle, it doesn't turn out so great, all right? But when I lift my arm up a little bit off the page, and instead of moving my fingers and my wrist, I'm going to move my elbow and my shoulder. And if I draw nice and light, I'm going to get something a lot more similar to a perfect circle. You're going to notice that when I'm drawing this, I'm going around several times. The reason I'm doing that is because every time I go around, it's not going to be perfect the first time. But when I go around a couple of times, I'm kind of making corrections where I see it went wrong in my first couple of attempts. I can then go back and get rid of the extra lines, which shows more of that perfect circle shape when I'm all done. Okay, I can then go back and if I want to, I can readjust some of these lines. All right, so I'm using continuous movement. I'm going to do that again. I'm using continuous movement, which means I'm not stopping as I go. I'm also drawing from my elbow and my shoulder. I'm keeping my wrist and my fingers still when I draw. I'm tracing around a couple of times and I'm drawing nice and light. Okay, that's going to get me a nice, perfect circle. Okay, in order to make an oval from there, I'm just going to squish it and make it a little bit longer, top to bottom, like this, or side to side. Okay, I can then go back and get rid of my extra lines that I don't need. This is kind of like a guide, so if I wanted to make like a perfect oval from here, let's say I wanted to darken up my lines for some reason, I can then go back in and trace over what I've done to be left with more of that precise shape. All right. For our angular shapes like a triangle or a square, if you're just going with going corner to corner, sometimes it doesn't look quite as nice. Sometimes it might be a little bit more of a sideways triangle when you need it to be equilateral. So again, you're going to keep your lines nice and light. You're going to keep, instead of moving your wrist, because if I move my wrist, I'm going to get a curved line, I'm going to keep my wrist straight. And I can actually sketch those lines a little longer than what I need. This helps me to create more of a perfect triangle shape. It helps me to make it a little more even because instead of focusing on the whole triangle, like I would be when I'm drawing like this, I'm focusing on one line at a time to kind of capture that shape that I need. The same will go for rectangles and squares. So if I'm drawing a rectangular square, corner to corner, it gets a little weird, it gets a little funky, my right angles might not be perfect. But when I'm focusing on drawing line by line and keeping it nice and loose and sketching, it helps me to create more equal lines and correct angles in the corners of my shapes, okay? So just a quick demo, the last shape that I want to show you, possibly that you could need, is a trapezoid. So again, you can make those lines a little bit more sketchy and then erase what you don't need. This helps me kind of map out the angles a little bit better too. All right, so if we are drawing something a little bit more complicated, for instance, let's see, I have this little metal container here for it actually has some fun little like silly putty in it. But if I'm using this little container here, if I'm trying to draw that, all right, it's a little hard to see from where you are based on where my camera is, but I'm going to focus it like this so you can see. I'm going to combine this by using a rectangle shape to represent the side and some of us might know that the top is a circle, right? But I'm going to actually use what we call an ellipse or an oval here to capture that shape. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to draw my rectangle first, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to look, I'm tilting it so I can see what you were seeing before. I'm going to make kind of that round oval shape at the top. I want to make sure my oval doesn't extend past my rectangle, but this kind of helps me figure out where that oval is, and then I'm going to do my little kind of curved shape at the bottom. The last bit, if I want to, I can go back and add some of the details like I see here. For the lid, I can also notice those little itty bitty details like the ridge of where the lid connects to the jar. All right, my last and final step would be to go back. I would erase out those extra lines of the rectangle that I don't need, and if I wanted to go back and fill in the details a little bit more with those little ridges, I could add those little ridges as I go, and then I'm going to be left with that shape that you see. All right, so basic shapes are a key foundation for drawing. Please, as you're practicing, try the sketching technique. Try not to draw super light because we will end up erasing these shapes when we're drawing objects. Hopefully that helps. I'm looking forward to see how this plays out in your drawings.